My husband's canary ran away, leaving only a note. I'm sorry, I ran away with my bestie, bye. So, he, who had never fallen for a woman, searched all over the world for 3 months. He staged a vigorous wife-chasing crematorium, and turned me into a joke on the internet. Later, he brought her back obediently. She ran to me and sighed distressfully, I don't want to ruin your marriage. But what can I do? President Zeus seems to really like me. Or, you should give up your position. If it were the past, I would definitely be furious, stand up all my thorns, and defend my dignity. But this time, I really don't care. 01 On the 7th day after finding the canary, Zeus finally came back. Seeing me sitting quietly at the dining table, he was surprised for a moment. It's so late, why haven't you slept yet? Then his eyes rose with vigilance and impatience. Tell me, how do you want to make trouble this time? Since his canary disappeared, he made a lot of trouble in order to find her. Our relationship changed from being cold to endless quarrels. But I suppressed all my emotions this time. I didn't ask him why he showed his love in a high-profile manner and set off fireworks for her for 7 days and 7 nights. I didn't ask him why he trampled on my dignity and turned me into a joke on the internet. I just glanced at the lipstick mark on his collar and whispered, I prepared a gift for you. Zeus was stunned, and his eyes swept across the solidified dishes on the table, and he suddenly remembered something. Then he eased his expression, sorry, I forgot that today is our 4th anniversary. I'll make up for the gift later. As he said this, he approached me as if to show goodwill. But as soon as I smelled the perfume on him, I subconsciously turned my face away. His loosened brows immediately twisted again. I knew you would still give me a cold shoulder, I'm going to take a shower. I looked at his back disappearing at the stairs. Then I looked at the unopened gift on the table. My heart was filled with sadness. I followed him upstairs. The phone that was charging on the cabinet lit up frequently. It was less than an hour since we separated. His beloved had already sent a series of messages. Big pig's hoof, we just separated, and I already miss you a little. Woo 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 woo, stinky man, I was tortured by you for 7 days and 7 nights, and now I find that I can't get out of bed. Just tell me what to do. I will punish you to dream about me tonight. Hehehe. The heart that I thought was dead suddenly ached again, then it penetrated into my internal organs and limbs. At this moment, a gaze was fixed on me. I looked up suddenly and saw that Zeus had been standing there at some point, staring at me coldly, with a mocking smile on his lips. Have you seen enough? Don't tell me you are not used to it, Mrs. Zeus. 02 The next day, Zeus went out early in the morning, and the gift was still quietly placed on the dining table. I sat down, untied the winding wires, and took out the divorce agreement I signed. In fact, before last night, I hadn't decided which gift to give him. Is it a divorce agreement or a pregnancy test report? But during the long wait last night, blowing the night wind, looking at the grand fireworks blooming in the sky, I suddenly figured it out. The man I loved deeply has lost his way. 7 years ago, on a snowy Christmas Eve, I went out to buy cold medicine while studying abroad, but I fainted in the car. It was Zeus who passed by and saved me. From then on, I fell in love with him at first sight. My friend advised me, who in the study abroad circle doesn't know that Zeus is handsome, rich, and has an extraordinary family background. Just play with such a person, don't take it seriously. But I have already fallen. He was distant before meeting that person, but passionate and domineering in private. He is always the focus in the crowd, but always childishly jealous of others chatting with me. In the heavy snow, he would always warm my cold hands and gently put them into his coat pocket. However, his words came true. After marriage, he began to change. Especially after he accidentally found out that his stepmother, whom he had hated for many years, was a close friend of my mother. The way he looked at me changed from the former sincerity and enthusiasm to a little more suspicion, a little alienation, and then to no warmth. I don't know if he really cares so much or just doesn't love me anymore. He began to bring female stars in and out unscrupulously. He was photographed in the scandal without any taboo. He also kept canaries in captivity. And I, from the initial bitter explanation and attempts to retain, to the painful heartbreak and numb acceptance. Suddenly, the memories of the past were interrupted by Zeus' assistant. She sent a beautiful brocade box, saying it was an anniversary gift from Zeus's president. When I opened it, it was a shining diamond ring. It's a pity that it's not my size. I came to my senses and stopped thinking about it. I picked up the file bag and set out. 03 Push open the door of the president's office. The two overlapping figures suddenly separated. Zeus' breath was disordered and his face was slightly gloomy. What are you doing here? Then, he gently comforted his frightened canary. Starry, go out and make a cup of coffee first. The woman hurried away. The atmosphere fell into dullness. Seeing that Zeus was waiting for me to speak first, I took out the file bag from my bag and handed it to him. You haven't opened the gift yesterday. But he raised his sword eyebrows slightly, a little surprised. You don't ask? Yeah. The man was silent for a moment, looking at me inquiringly. as if he was a little uncomfortable. After a few seconds, he half explained and half humiliated, "She is clinging to me now, so I let her be a secretary for fun." In the past, I couldn't stand it for a second and asked him, "What am I?" But this time, I didn't react at all. I just calmly pointed to the file bag in my hand again. Zeus' eyes flickered slightly, and he stared at me thoughtfully for a few seconds before slowly taking it. After a few seconds, he suddenly looked up and looked at me in disbelief. In his complex expression, joy gradually seeped out. "You are pregnant?" I was stunned, and then I realized that the one in his hand was actually a pregnancy test form. I must have accidentally taken the wrong one. Just as I was about to explain, there was a sudden clang, and Starry fell to the ground at the door, and the cup shattered all over the floor. She looked at us with resentment, got up in embarrassment, and ran away in a hurry. Zeus frowned, threw down a heavy sentence, "Wait for me here," and quickly chased after him. But I won't wait any longer. In this 4-year marriage, I waited for his romantic news, waited for the provocations sent by those women in the middle of the night, waited for the gossip reporters, the concern of parents and friends, and the jokes that covered the entire network. But I never waited for him to change his mind. I'm tired of waiting, I've waited enough. Wiping away the teardrop that rolled down, I took a taxi and went straight to the hospital. 04, but I didn't expect it. In the hospital, I ran into the couple again. At that time, the woman's palm was wrapped in several circles of bandages, and was protected in the man's arms. Zeus stopped and squinted his eyes to look at me from head to toe. "Why are you here? Didn't I tell you to wait for me?" As he said, his tone was a little colder. "Or, are you following us?" I pulled the corners of my mouth ridiculously. I really want to tell him. I didn't follow them, I came to induce labor. But thinking that there was a possibility that he would obstruct, I still endured it. But my lack of explanation was taken as a default by Zeus. He was about to say something with a sarcastic look in his eyes. Then Starry shook his arm intimately beside him. "Well, uncle, don't quarrel. Can you go get me some medicine first? Please?" After sending Zeus away effortlessly, Starry looked at me sincerely. "Miss Happy, I'm sorry, I just want to ask, do you like the ring I chose?" As she said that, she shook the bracelet on her wrist at me with a smile. "Look, I have one too, it's so expensive, it costs 200,000. My heart sank. Huh. I thought that he had someone prepare the ring casually. But I didn't expect that he indulged her to humiliate me. I came back to my senses, met her provocative gaze, and smiled faintly. "Miss Starry, do you know what the difference between us is? The things he gave me are the common property of the couple. But everything he gave you, you have to pay it back in the future." The smile on Starry's mouth froze instantly. The next second, she left angrily. 05 Actually, I had someone figure out Starry's background a long time ago. On the surface, she was just an ordinary college student. She spent the whole day drinking milk tea and looking at handsome guys with her bestie Cindy. In fact, she was very ambitious. In her senior year, Cindy hooked up with Howard, Zeus' childhood friend and married man, while working part-time at a club. Then she brought Starry to Zeus through matchmaking. At first, Starry acted nonchalant. "I'm not interested in him. I agreed to be his canary just to go clubbing, drinking and ordering male models with you." However, after discovering that there were so many women around Zeus, but she was inconspicuous among them, Starry got anxious again. She painstakingly pulled Cindy to direct and act out a "you run, I run" drama. Not only did it successfully attract Zeus' attention, it also caused a sensation in the whole city. Later, Starry secretly enjoyed herself on the internet with a small account. "Woo woo woo, failed to run away, I have to accept the punishment. 7 days and 7 nights, the results can be checked. I didn't expect the president's body to be better than the male model, hee hee. Question, what should I do if my partner is too domineering? The troubles of being a woman." She also interacted with her bestie in the comment area. "Now you know how good the president is." Smirk, "Humph, I don't want a married man like this, I just want his money." "Don't be so stubborn, don't I know you?" Starry simply stopped pretending. "Hee hee, you are a close friend." "Yes, I fell in love with him, I love him to death. Anyway, they don't have any feelings. If it wasn't me, there would be others." Just like that, I signed alone, lay on the cold operating table alone, and cut off my fate with the child alone in the heart-wrenching pain. At the same time, Zeus traveled around the world with his canary. While they were busy skiing, going to sea, and riding hot air balloons, I packed my things and moved out of that house. Then I sent the divorce agreement to his company. Half a month later, I received a call from Zeus. But he didn't mention the divorce. Instead, he said he was coming to pick me up to attend the engagement party of his childhood friend Howard and Cindy. It turned out that he had just landed. He hadn't gone home or to the company yet. When I walked out of the mall, Zeus Maybach was already waiting on the roadside. The passenger seat was naturally Starry. "Sorry, Miss Happy, I'm a little carsick, so I'm sitting here." You don't mind, do you? Zeus also took off his sunglasses, his black eyes flashing coldly. Happy, you go sit in the back seat. But before he finished speaking, I had already sat in the back seat and fastened my seat belt. Zeus was a little choked for a moment. After starting the car, he suddenly said lightly that he had prepared a dress for her. But his thoughtful eyes frequently swept through the rearview mirror. Starry's crisp joy instantly resounded in the car. Woo, uncle, you are so nice, love you. Mua. But I remained indifferent, as quiet as a dead person, and didn't ask. I thought that Zeus should be satisfied with this. But who knows, he was still inexplicably angry, with a cold tone. Happy, what's wrong, you have become mute after not seeing you for a few days? I sneered. Why, you let me get used to it, but you are not used to it. Or do you need someone to clap your hands beside you? He was speechless, and a little annoyed rose on his face. I could only step on the accelerator hard. I wandered alone at the banquet. I dealt with the pitying eyes without changing my expression. Zeus sent away his active little lover, found me with a stern face, and reminded me that I should follow him and fulfill my obligations as Mrs. Zeus to the outside world. I drank the champagne in one gulp and ignored it. In fact, if I hadn't thought I could see Zeus' grandmother who has lived abroad for a long time here and tell her about the divorce, I wouldn't have come here at all. Happy, what the hell are you doing? Zeus gritted his teeth and his face sank. He suddenly grabbed my wrist and changed the subject. How come you have become so thin after not seeing you for a few days? I sent someone to buy a lot of baby products and sent them back home. Did you receive them? But I broke away coldly and left him there. After a few more glasses of wine, I found a quiet corner to rest. But I ran into the Starry sisters laughing and chatting on the sofa. Cindy, you are now the legitimate wife of Howard. I am so happy for you. I am happy for you too. Now who doesn't know that you, Starry, are the favorite of President Zeus? Hurry up and make some noise, let's try to have another run with the ball. Yeah, it's almost there. Starry smiled and stroked her belly, the ambition in her eyes was clear at a glance. That old woman will be defeated soon. Just when the two of them were laughing together, Starry found me and looked surprised. She concealed her panic, stood up and walked over with an arrogant attitude. You heard everything just now, right? Actually, I don't want to ruin your marriage. But what can I do? President Zeus seems to really like me. As she said that, a sharp provocation flashed in her eyes. Or, you give up your position? I smiled and asked softly, if I give up, can you get it? This sentence made her face flushed and she bit her lips tightly. Suddenly, her eyes lit up, flashing with some ill intentions. She suddenly changed into a painful expression, as if bitten by the air, and the whole person suddenly crashed into the champagne tower next to her. Suddenly, the magnificent tower collapsed, and the glass was scattered. There was a surprised and angry shout behind her. Happy, what did you do to her? Looking back, I saw Zeus and many guests standing in shock. Cindy hurried to support Starry who was groaning in pain on the ground, screaming in panic, oh my god, how could this happen? Our Starry just got pregnant. Zeus came back to his senses, rushed over with a sullen face and leaned over to check. When he looked up again, his eyes were already restrained with raging anger. Happy, tell me, what's going on? Starry's eyes were filled with tears, and she spoke first. Uncle, don't be angry, I accidentally offended Miss Happy first. Because of this photo. As she said that, she showed the photo tightly held in her hand to Zeus. Zeus' eyes flashed, and his face completely sank. He slapped the photo to my face, clenched his fist, and bit his back teeth. Happy, who is this man? I was stunned for a second and saw the person in the photo clearly. Looking at the furious Zeus, the smug Starry, and the people who were watching the show, I smiled coldly. Who it is, it's none of your business. Her fall has nothing to do with me. If you are really so nervous about her, why not marry her today and make her legitimate? Pa, Zeus' veins popped out and he slapped me hard. You are crazy. Do you know what you are talking about? Your performance tonight disappointed me. You are not worthy of the title of Mrs. Zeus. I stroked the pain on my face, my heart was completely dead and clean. Then divorce. His breathing stagnated. What did you say? I said, I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth, looked at the man in front of me coldly, word by word, Zeus, I want to divorce you. 09 From that day on, the breakdown of my marriage with Zeus was known to everyone. Not only did my relatives and friends send all kinds of caring messages, the whole network was also hotly discussing, will this rich couple break up? Does anyone really believe it? Their interests are so deeply bound, how can they break up just like that? I bet they will reconcile in the next episode. But only I knew clearly that this marriage was completely over. I flew to the other side of the earth. I spent half a month relaxing by the peaceful snow-capped mountains and lakes. I cleared away some past memories, some burdens, and some emotions. During this period, Zeus called me 3 times for the first time. In the first call, he angrily asked me what I meant by moving my things away and told me not to regret it. In the second call, he asked me where I was and whether I was playing hard to get again. In the third call, he asked me when I would go for a prenatal checkup and he would go with me. His tone changed from angry to relaxed, but he never mentioned divorce. And now, I received his fourth call. Happy, where's the shirt you gave me last year? Why can't I find it? I took a deep breath. Zeus, listen carefully. From today on, where is your shirt? Where is your tie? Where is your person? Where is your heart? None of these have anything to do with me. I haven't blocked your number yet, just because there is still divorce. The other party paused, with a bit of irritation in his voice. Happy, you haven't made enough noise after so many days? You are not a 3-year-old child anymore. Don't you know how deeply we are involved? Family, stocks, me, and children, how can you give up these? You should have a limit to your behavior, don't be too much. Listening to his harsh words, I couldn't help but feel absurd. After the absurdity, there was a deep sadness. It turned out that he never doubted my love, but was too sure of my love. That's why he has always been so fearless. After a long silence, I sneered, Zeus, don't scold me, scold yourself. You know what? Chasing and pestering will only make you a joke. After saying that, I hung up the phone. After returning from the trip, I made an appointment with a lawyer without stopping. While waiting for the other party in the restaurant, Starry suddenly appeared. She threw her branded bag on the table, and said arrogantly with a mocking tone, Miss Happy, you finally stopped hiding? Please do what you said, sign the divorce as soon as possible, and stop pestering Zeus. I looked at her dimly, smiling. Although I didn't pay attention to her news anymore. But I still heard that last week, when Zeus was busy appeasing the board of directors, she stood aside as an assistant, busy and messed up, and made a lot of trouble. Zeus was impatient and asked her to go home first. I think it was because he didn't coax her, or she didn't hear about the progress of the divorce. So she was a little panicked. I whispered, Miss Starry, I'm not hiding, and I'm not busy pestering your Zeus, because I'm busy messing with you. She was stunned, and her expression instantly became alert. What do you mean? What did you do? I did a lot. Which one? Seeing the astonishment in her eyes, I explained slowly. 10 minutes ago, I exposed your social media account. Now, I guess all the little thoughts between you and your bestie have been exposed to the whole network. Oh, by the way, I heard that Howard's family is very dissatisfied with her because of the last incident. Starry was stunned, annoyed, and anxious. You are crazy. I will sue you for invasion of privacy. That's perfect. I am also preparing to sue you and ask you to return all the ill-gotten gains. Including the expensive $200,000 bracelet on your wrist. Huh, you dare? Starry's face turned pale, trying to stabilize her heaving chest and trembling tone. Zeus won't let you do this. Well, since you mentioned him. By the way, do you need me to kindly tell you about your fake pregnancy? She suddenly slammed the table, trembling all over, staring at me with horror, hateful and fearful eyes. I smiled faintly, glanced behind her, and said faintly, or, why don't you tell him yourself? Starry froze. When she turned around, she had changed into a tearful face and rushed to Zeus. Uncle, she plotted against me. The next second, he slapped her to the ground. Zeus's face was gloomy and his eyes were fierce. Starry, you plotted against me. What I hate most in my life is other people's damned plots. Uncle, it's not what you think. She covered her cheeks, crying and shouting to explain. But I was frightened by the disgust overflowing from his eyebrows. I had no interest in listening anymore, so I got up and left. Zeus quickly followed behind and pulled my hand. Where are you going? Go home with me. I shook him off coldly, no. But he still insisted, it's okay after the angry words, go back with me. The next second, a tall figure stood between us and protected me behind him. Zeus was stunned, his eyes suddenly sharp. Is it you? The man in the photo? The man stretched out his hand, his tone was calm and polite, but his posture was calm and strong, and he did not give in. Hello, President Zeus. My name is Justin. Miss Happy's attorney and pursuer. In an instant, Zeus' eyes flashed and his face was tense. Just after getting rid of Zeus's pursuit, I got into Lawyer Chen's car. 5 minutes later, he was stopped by him frantically. I saw him rushing down from the car, losing all his grace, and knocking on the passenger window frantically. Happy, come down and talk. I grabbed Lawyer Chen, who had a slightly gloomy expression, shook my head, and then got out of the car. Zeus's usual calmness disappeared, and his eyes were full of irritability. Aren't you going to explain this man? When did you meet him, and when did you get close to him? I replied coldly, I'm afraid I don't have the obligation to explain to you. He became even more excited. No obligation? I'm your husband. The father of the child in your belly. My originally calm heart was stirred by those 2 words, and I couldn't help it anymore, and I slapped him hard. Zeus looked at me in shock, his eyes red, and clenched his fists. Unexpectedly, the next second he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened his eyes again, his tone softened. You are pregnant, you can't get excited. I'm just angry, you can make a fuss anyway, you shouldn't use other men to make me angry. As he said that, he lowered his noble head. Okay, I apologize to you for what happened before. I promise that no other woman will bother you anymore. Come back with me, we will raise the child well in the future. I couldn't help laughing when I heard his half favorable and half taken for granted tone. Then I stared at him, almost cruelly, word by word. Zeus, there is no child. I have taken the child away. There is no future between us. He took a step back, as if struck by lightning, and looked at me in disbelief. As if he finally realized that I was serious. 13 After that, I went back to work at the family company while dealing with the divorce. Fortunately, my parents supported me after knowing my decision. During the day, I devoted myself to work and followed my father to get familiar with the management of the company. At night, I picked up some of the business administration classes of the year, Miss Happy. I admit that sometimes, just a distraction or a gap, negative emotions will take the opportunity to get in and want to beat me back to my original form. But I ran, exercised, and learned musical instruments without stopping. Finally, I recovered. At the same time, Zeus, who had been silent for a while, came back to me again. He set off fireworks all over the city for me, used the largest billboard of CBD to show his love to me. He gave me all the gifts for the days I missed, for my wedding anniversary, birthday, Chinese Valentine's Day. He also reported to me every day, whether he was on a business trip or working overtime. In the past, I would have been moved to my core. But now, I am only impatient and annoyed. It turns out that after you have completely let go of someone, no matter how much the other person does, it will only be a nuisance. I stood on the terrace and said indifferently to the figure who had been standing outside the gate for several consecutive days, "Go away, don't force me to call the police." He glanced at Lawyer Chen, who was standing beside me sadly, and spoke obscurely. Happy, I have punished Starry. I have also cut off all the women outside. That's why I dare to come to see you. Now, I just want to ask for your forgiveness. I turned around indifferently and told the security guard to drive him away. 14 Back to the house. Lawyer Chen told me that Zeus had already sued Starry. It turned out that some time ago, Starry's second account was exposed. She and her bestie were caught in the center of the storm, and together with the two rich sons, they were ridiculed by the whole network. So, Cindy was quickly divorced by Howard's family. Starry was also kicked out. Not only did Zeus take back all the real estate and jewelry, but he also sued her for fraud and other crimes, and was entangled in lawsuits. In addition, the two were inexplicably attacked by gangsters and were beaten. I was silent for a moment, and said in a light voice, "Then just focus on the divorce case." Lawyer Chen nodded. I bumped into his deep and quiet black eyes, and my heart moved slightly. In fact, I knew him a long time ago, although we were just nodding acquaintances. When I was in college, he was already one of the most reliable young lawyer consultants in my father's group. After deciding to divorce, I asked him for help. He agreed without hesitation. That day, after Zeus chased the car, he expressed his feelings to me. But I refused. I just broke up a 7-year relationship, and I was scared. Now I clearly realize that it is better to put all my joys, sorrows, anger and happiness into my own heart instead of tying them to others. But I am very grateful to him for maintaining his demeanor, being rational, quiet and not disturbing. My mood is getting better day by day. Except Zeus is still pestering me. He often waits downstairs of the company, in the garage, and outside the villa. Even my parents were alarmed. My father arranged a bodyguard for me. My mother went straight to his office and scolded him. However, after losing face in front of all the employees, Zeus did not get angry, but asked, "Mom, if you calm down, can you help me persuade Happy?" My mother was so angry that she left. In the early morning of that night, a ring broke the silence of the night. Mrs. Zeus's voice rang beside my ear, "Happy, it's me. I'm not feeling well and I'm in the hospital now. Can you come and see me when you have time?" Rushed to the hospital. I saw that the pale person leaning on the bed within 4 drip was Zeus. Mrs. Zeus came up to apologize to me. "Happy, I'm sorry, it was Mom who lied to you. But Zeus, this rascal, caused himself to have gastric bleeding. I had no choice but to trick you here first." I was silent. I should have thought of it earlier. But I really didn't expect that Zeus would put aside his pride and invite his hated stepmother to be a lobbyist. As soon as I learned about this abroad, I flew back immediately. "I don't ask you to forgive him, I just hope you give me a chance to speak. You two have a good chat, okay?" Mrs. Zeus went out. Only Zeus was left on the bed, with red eyes and his eyes following silently. "Happy, do you know?" he said hoarsely. "Lying here, I hate the damn self so much. Why didn't I cherish you who waited for me at home every day, and didn't cherish every meal you cooked for me?" His words were a little broken and messy. But I understood it immediately. Zeus has had stomach problems since his school days. So even though there were cracks and cold wars between us, I still carefully prepared lunch boxes every day and asked someone to send them to the company, always the same, but he never looked at me more than once. I shook off the trace of disappointment. His voice was as cold as ice. Don't say these things. It's useless. Don't go. Happy. Zeus hurriedly hugged me from behind, as if he wanted to rub me into his body. I seemed to feel hot tears falling on my neck. I only heard him begging in my ear, his voice was tight. I really know I was wrong. I was confused at first. I thought you were a pawn that woman had deliberately planted next to me, then I was a jerk. I thought you would always be there for me. Now I'm reflecting and repenting every day. I can accept all your punishments and all your resentments. I can also put down all my self-esteem and pride. The only thing I really can't bear is divorce. Happy, please, give me another chance, okay? Suddenly, he ordered in a deep voice, bring the person in. I turned around in surprise. I saw two bodyguards tie up the crying Starry in front of me. She knelt on the ground, crying in embarrassment. Zeus, aren't you cruel enough to me? Why do you want to humiliate me like this? Whoa. Shut up. Zeus stopped Starry from crying with a hard slap, and held her down, kneeling in front of me. Happy, if you are angry, you can vent it to her or me. As long as you are willing to give me a chance after you calm down. Looking at Starry crying. Looking at the fragility and pain in Zeus' eyes. My heart didn't fluctuate at all. Turned and left. Zeus chased me and hugged me desperately. I struggled to get free, but he refused to let go, until Lawyer Chen, who came and knocked him to the ground with a fist. I looked at the man trembling on the ground and begging, and said coldly, "You'd better show up on Saturday when you get the marriage certificate. Otherwise, I will only look down on you even more." Zeus trembled all over, and his hand, which was frozen in the air, fell powerlessly. Lawyer Chen loosened his tie and squatted down. "The longer you delay, the more excuses I have to get along with Miss Happy. Thank you for bringing us together, Mr. Zeus." The man on the ground turned pale in an instant, his eyes full of despair. On Saturday, Zeus appeared. The 7-month divorce tug-of-war finally came to an end. In the final agreement, he gave me most of the stocks and properties. I gladly accepted it. Coming out of the Civil Affairs Hall. His figure was a little shaky. The lifeless eyes looked at me deeply, full of pain. The trembling lips opened and closed, but not a word came out. Accompanied by my parents, I left resolutely. There was always a desperate sight following behind me. But I didn't look back. That night, news came that Zeus fell into the sea after racing and attempted suicide. 3 years later. At my wedding, Zeus came uninvited in a wheelchair. He was thin and his face was haggard. The pair of eyes that once bewitched people were deeply sunken, tired and lifeless, completely different from what I remembered. I heard that night, he wanted to die. But he was still rescued. However, his legs were also disabled. I heard that his mental state was not very good. Not only did he retire from the position of president, but he also disappeared from everyone's sight. I don't remember what else I heard later. Because I didn't care anymore. At this wedding that I arranged with my own hands, he looked at me infatuatedly and spoke slowly. "You look so beautiful in a wedding dress. It's a pity, it's not for me." A tear rolled from his eyes. Across his gray and bleak cheeks. I smiled indifferently. Not touched. No response. Just then, I heard someone calling my name. A noble and handsome man walked over quickly and invited me to set off fireworks with a smile. He is my husband. He is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. I put my hand in his warm and large palm. They smiled at each other and went away hand in hand.